Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're joining us from. It's Marcia Warren Edelman with Cultural Global Labs, and welcome to our webinar today on leadership and well-being, the path to the future, a very timely subject these days. And I want to introduce who's going to be with us today. First, from Cultural Global Labs, Lori Welch is our Chief Facilitation Officer. Thank you, Lori, for handling all of the behind the scenes with our registrants and people who are joining us. So very grateful for that. Our Chief Visionary Officer, Antimo, and yes, we're so happy to have Antimo with us, and Paul Kuthi, who is a business consultant, leadership consultant, also joining us. Then Antimo and Paul will be speaking to us today on this very important topic.
Audrey.
Thank you all. What we'd like to do as we have people joining us is just let everyone know that as we start the webinar, this is going to be a little bit of an informative experience. We're going to have some slides and some discussion, but we also want to invite you to come into the chat room and please put questions in there. I'll be tracking the questions. Both Paul and Antimo really want to hear what's on your minds and what your experiences are. Also, where are you coming from today? Where are you located? And what's your interest in this particular area? I'll be monitoring the questions, and we'll also give some time at the end of the webinar for open Q&A. So yeah, by all means, stay engaged. We're happy to have everyone with us. So welcome to everybody. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Antimo and to Paul to introduce themselves and the topic today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Marcia. It's always a pleasure to be on this calls. They're very motivating and inspiring. And we just started, so the attendance tends to be a few people, but we record this and then we post them as resources on our website so that more people will be actually seeing them. We do have a fantastic speaker today. Paul Kuthi is with us from Washougal, a small town on the river, which is dreamy. And as of lately, we've been doing wellness retreats face-to-face at his property. And so I thought, what a great opportunity to actually now talk about this topic of leadership and well-being that is so timely, as Marcia said. I'm going to turn it quickly to Paul to sort of introduce himself and really weave a little story of what his expertise are and his passion for this work. Paul.
Thanks, Antimo, and thanks for having us here, and thank you for attending. It's been a pleasure running these retreats here at the river with Antimo, and we've been bouncing ideas back and forth. We've only done a couple of them, and what struck me initially working with him was that even though we've come from very different backgrounds and very different spaces and worked with very different clients from all over the world, we have so much overlap and sort of agreements and parallels with what it is that we convey and what it is we help clients discover about themselves and about the environment and about really how to lead themselves and others with passion. And it like every single point throughout the retreat when we're building the outline, it's like, oh, I love to teach people that too. We got to share them this. We got to tell them this. We got to share this. And it ends up being about a 3-day retreat in one day because we pack so much in. But my background is really started off in adventure sport. So I came out here to the Northwest to be a professional kayaker and dealing with sort of, pushing myself and my clients to the absolute limit of what's possible in a kayak and really traveling the world and shooting videos and dealing with some of the biggest rapids, some of the biggest seas that people paddle on. And in that work, it was really exhilarating, but also really stressful, really scary sometimes. And I would end up really helping people, sure, with their kayaking skills or whatever, that was fine. But what I ended up doing for folks is helping them discover that confidence within themselves and how to face fears and in high stakes, high pressure sort of environments, and how to make good decisions based on a set of criteria that they can draw from anytime. And so that work led to being able to work with clients in all kinds of different contexts, including business. And I spent the better part of the last 4 or 5 years really implanting those concepts and those philosophies and tools and frameworks of adventure athletes into business owners, because running a business and being a leader and being a manager of a team, those kind of like an adventure, and you don't know what's coming down the road. There's all kinds of external factors, and really the things we have control over are very limited. Certainly can't control the river, and so we have to then find control within. And so that's been the work that's really been focused for me, and why I love so much working with Antimo, because he has a whole bunch of other tools and tricks that I fully intend on stealing. Thank you for that, Antimo, and using them whenever I can. But I love hearing him share, not just because of the charming accent, but because of the quality of content he has. So, Antimo, what are folks expecting from you today?
Well, you said some key things, of course, and the metaphor of the river is actually powerful. And to be actually on the river bank while we are talking about this thing, it takes the whole experience to the next level, because you really can embody it. You can take the concept, internalize it, and we do a lot of that internalizing work. And you also mentioned that inner going inside, because you can't control the external environment, but there's one thing you can control, is the internal environment. And so we talk about this concept of the multisensory inner matrix, these layers within us that we can all tap into, but we all need to be taught how to, either because we've forgotten. So for instance, the curiosity of experimenting with things and abandoning all kind of social expectation that we typically have as kids, all of a sudden disappears. And we have to sort of bring it back, that curiosity as a child, to start being experimenting and not being tied up to certain conventions, right? The thing that I want to say though is about this. Recently, Harvard Business Review has published, and I think it's like 10 days ago, it's published an article about the most important 21 jobs for the future. And it was really validating for us to notice that the number one job on the scale of 21 was Director of Wellbeing. And the second, also important because it ties to the concept of wellness overall, was Director of Bias and Inclusion. No wonder why these two topics are so high on the priority of every organization and every leader, because of the times we're going through. And so we have to also start thinking more of making a shift to have the conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion, about multicultural identity, at the same table as well-being. Because a person that cannot bring themselves fully to work within the layers of their identities and be recognized, validated, that person cannot feel possibly well in that workplace. So the conversation has to happen at the same table as the well-being, because it's not just the physical concept, it's a whole holistic and psychological concept as well. So we talk about this stuff, circumstances are continuously validating this. But what's interesting too is that we've had 2 full retreats, about 15 people each. And the vast majority of people attending were people that were either in managerial positions, people in social work and healthcare. We have physicians, we had neuroscientists as well. And the common theme was that they are depleted. They are in a position where they need to keep on giving to, and they are suffering from this very heavy conversation that they have with their clients and with their patients. Then put on top of that all of the social, racial tension that we're going through, all of the uncertainty that keeps on lingering around with this COVID-19 situation. And everybody is just completely depleting this battery of the energy. And the energy that we have to be about who we are and show up on how we show up in our position, in our family, is all subject to energy. Energy is the currency of engagement. If we don't have energy, if our energy is low, we have to understand that we have to do something to create more energy, to replenish that battery. So back to you, Paul, about anything you want to add about these trends that we've been seeing.
I see it all the time. And in the coaching field, we see it as well. I don't know about you all exactly what you do. I know Audrey is a coach as well, but back-to-back Zoom meetings when riding the roller coaster of our clients' experiences, it takes its toll. And being on that ride with them and really being present with them and being empathetic to what they're going through is important. How do you get off, or how do you recoup the next one that starts 15 minutes down the way here for the next Zoom meeting? And so that is that's been something that I've noticed in myself and as well as other people. And I wanted to be just a little bit vulnerable and share a little reminder that none of us are impervious to this. And this is something I've been thinking about for years and years. But even just this last year, I found myself in a situation where I was not dealing with my stress and riding that roller coaster in healthy ways. I just wanted to quickly share just from about, these photos were about the nail biting one was a couple of years ago, but the my physical condition was deteriorating before my eyes amongst getting ready to move and having the business run well, and the start of this pandemic, it really started to take its toll. And through getting back to some of these basics and getting back to some of the concepts we'll be sharing with you today, I can say that I'm luckily recovering from my issues. So the fingernail biting was something that actually took a bit of work with my coach a couple of years ago, but have started back eating well. My hair is growing back. It's all feeling much better. And so I just want to remind everybody here that even though we probably are familiar with some of these concepts, being reminded of them and actually doing the work and actually putting in the daily practice is key. The retreats I kind of mentioned are sort of like, we're sort of like going to the dentist for a teeth cleaning. And Simon Sinek does a good talk about this. I really loved. It's sort of like people treat these leaderships or these retreats, these workshops, like going to the dentist, and they feel like, oh, I've got my cleaning, I'm good to go for another 6 months. And it really is more about brushing the teeth, right? If we just did the cleaning, our teeth would rot out and it'd be gruesome. So what it really takes is that repeated, consistent action.
And that's where leadership comes into place, right? If you can't, if your responsibility is to lead others, if other people are looking up to you for their guidance, then you have to invest first into yourself, your well-being, so that you have the energy, sufficient energy to lead others, right? And in the wellness retreats we've been having, we've seen mostly people that were at the tipping point of, I gotta do something or I'm breaking down, seriously breaking down. And so your body talks to you, your emotions talk to you, and but we are not really good listeners of our own inner self, inner matrix, right? And yet it's constantly sending us signals in the shapes and forms like you showed on those photos. And we keep on not prioritizing that because we are too worried about the money to be made, or I have too much going on, or whatever is the case. And yet sometimes all you need is a 15 minutes every day to practice some breathing techniques, to try and laugh out of your being, even without cracking a joke, and what that does to your system to elevate that energy and battery power. I'm going to also share some slides on and off because we touched on certain things that are critical. Right now it's about bringing awareness ongoingly. Because the awareness, if we don't have awareness, then we're not signal that we need to do something. And that has to happen so many times until finally we do something. Because it takes a repeated, the brain works this way. The more you say something, the more it wires together until it finally starts happening.
What is that? I love the neurons that fire together, wire together.
Wire together, right. And that's exactly it, and when we resist doing something that we know is right, is because we are trapped in our routine, in our comfort zone, because we know that if I'm going to do something different, that implies change. And all of a sudden our system goes into, oh, that's different. Oh, I don't know how to do that. And so we have to do patterns. We have to establish new patterns to undo old patterns. The slides I'm going to share are really what sometimes we use in the wellness retreat as well.
Antimo, can I jump in for just a moment?
Oh, yes.
I'm also facilitating, so I didn't really say that at the beginning, but something that I know that the two of you are probably facing that's new in this particular time, and I'd love for you all to touch on that, is that we're in a time of global anxiety and stress through the pandemic and through, social changes and upheavals. And in a different way, these are layered traumatic events that are resilient. In the past, people have been able to experience a traumatic event, it stops, they start the healing. But I think we're in unprecedented times right now, wouldn't you say? And that we have one thing after another. And then,
Absolutely.
I heard a report, outlining that, at least in the United States, about a quarter of people that have been surveyed are having major depressive symptoms. And they're calling that the second wave of this pandemic, because
Right.
it's all related, not just to the pandemic, but to the loss of jobs, to the loss of social support that we've all been used to leaning on. So
Right.
I wonder how you're integrating that into the work that you all do now.
Well, this is spot on, because what we're saying is this. We know that change happens. We know that we have a capacity as human beings to adapt and actually change. It's just, again, doing the work, wiring those neurons, firing and wiring. But we also are experiencing this long and constant sense of uncertainty. And the more things happen in society, the more that constant grievance, uncertainty, fear is reinforced. The more important is to take the time and try and swing the pendulum on the other side, to do something like a wellness retreat, to take a practice on of stopping every now and then and do 1 minute nose breathing exercises, to say, okay, I get up at 6 because by 7 I have to be on Zoom calls. Well, wake up at 5:45, try and do 15 minutes of meditation, see what that does to you. But don't try it just once or twice. You have to have a practice that extends over a period of 3 weeks at least, to start sensing the difference. And the more you appreciate the results, the rewards, the brain likes rewards, the more you want to repeat that. Okay. So yeah, it's you bring an excellent point, and there is plenty of things being researched and written, especially if you follow the Neuroscience and Leadership Institute. They are saying that the trauma that is accumulating in people at a global level is going to affect us for the next 2 to 3 years. Yeah. And in particular, if you don't do anything, and I think we can certainly say all on the call that we are all experiencing some level of depression. I go in and out of that, and I have to find ways to smile and find some happy times, energy renewal, to counteract that force that is bring and try to pull you down, right? So that's what we have to do. Everyone has to do it.
There's a really handy tool that, if you would like, that I send to all my clients. That's a good place to start, to assess, like, where am I at in this self-care journey? Where do I need to improve? What are some low-hanging fruit that I can do or easy things that I can make myself feel much better? So if you wanted to pop your email in the chat, I can send you a little self-care checklist just to give yourself a baseline and see where you're at there. I got my email here. I'll send that out right away. But it's amazing what some of the basic physiological things that you can do to actually feel so much better mentally. I know Antimo's got a good slide that we're probably somewhat familiar with if we've been through, I don't know, middle school science class, but it definitely is something we'll be talking more about, and that's that hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, and another thing I want to add is, if you think about the uncertainty that is global and that has been going on for so many months, what I encourage people to do is, sure, the fear is real, the uncertainty is real, but don't let it feed on top of what normally some personality have the tendency to self-doubt themselves, where right now self-doubt takes over because we have no control, very little control, except on our internal self. So the question that I put out there to make us think about the possibility is, what if our greatest fears were hiding our greatest strengths? So what if that's the case? What if we don't have enough energy to believe in it, that we can do better, we can do something new, we can completely transform things from an interior place, right? Okay, I'm going to share the slide because one thing that I want to talk about is this concept. Let me see if I can do the slideshow here. Somebody has to tell me if it's working.
So far, so good. We see your
You see the slides in full view? Yes. You do. Okay, so the concept we often talk about at the beginning is this idea of fundamental human needs. Well, think about all of the past months. Can you look at these fundamental human needs and say that self-actualization right now is the most important thing? Or that esteem and self-respect and status and recognition is the most important thing? Well, no. I'm sorry, I don't think anybody can argue with me on that. But as you can see, almost the pyramid, it flips, because back in March and April, safety was the most important thing. We were all closed inside. And then the more that extended, the more the sense of loving, belonging, a hug, touch, trust, and friends and connections became more important. And also, of course, the food, because everybody was going to the store, and the stores were lacking food and all of that. So don't hold this as this never changes, because this pyramid of our fundamental human needs is strictly connected to the circumstances that we have no control over. That really brings us to talk about, then what do you do? Well, you have to abandon this idea of control. You have to abandon that comfort zone that we knew of back in October 1999. And we have to realize that we are in transition here. We're needing to leave the comfort zone and being okay in the uncomfortable zone. And if anything, thinking about that question that I asked earlier, think about how empowering this moment can be if we do the work on ourselves to find growth. So the idea of keeping a learning humility to say, I don't know what I don't know. I need to continue learning. I need to continue improving is the magic of this period and this moment, going from comfort to uncomfortable, and then finding ways to grow.
It's so true. I think that a unique thing about this time is that a lot of people can wrap their heads around being in the discomfort zone or being out of their comfort zone for a while. And especially if they can kind of recognize that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I find my business clients especially can really push hard and kind of go into a sprint mode if they know that down the line, a month or two or even a year, that there's a relief ahead. Yeah. It's sort of like when you're kind of trying to download something, or I had it this morning when I was doing my workout. I got into this workout video from home where I was like doing a move, got the move going, got it going. And like, I wasn't sure how long the workout guide, the guy on the video, was going to do that move for. And so at first I was like going gangbusters, just really getting after it. And then I thought it'd be about 30 seconds. But then after about 45 seconds or a minute, it was still going. And I just became exhausted. Whereas if I had, that progress bar that you have on the computer, that thing that's like, oh, look, I'm making progress. And there's the end. I can see the end right there. You can sort of put up with that. You can sort of sustain that level of effort for a while. Like on my workout video, I would have been able to pace myself and like maybe even push a little harder, a little further, because I know that the end is right there. But we don't have that right now. We don't know when this stressful time is going to end. And I think that's one of the most challenging parts for people is you can't teeth and bear it. You can't just white knuckle it and try to force new actions. We actually, a lot of people are for the first time having to go and do the hard work, the internal work of, different actions produce different results, but what produces those different actions is in reality not willpower, not gritting your teeth, not using that exhaustible resource, but actually tapping into the thoughts and feelings that give you the true lasting motivation and sustainable level of energy needed to stay outside of that comfort zone for an undetermined amount of time.
Yeah. Okay, so we also explored the concept of the multisensory inner matrix. And I want to just show this because when we think about wellness, we think of it, has been thought of it in the world, in society, in organization, as the physical well-being of people, wanting them to be well so that they can come to work and produce. But now we're actually seeing a movement to thinking about the holistic well-being of people. Like we said before, the psychological aspect matters just as much. If we are able to, our system, our body is a system. that is interconnected, interdependent. And there are things that happen on automatic basis, like digestion, and there are things that, or breathing, but we also have power to actually affect certain things. So for instance, breathing. We breathe in and out of our mouth most of the time, which is signaling that we are in an alert mode. And therefore the brain is actually using a lot more energy to stay alert, therefore depriving. And so what if every once in a while, when we sense we've been on that mode too long, we went in and took 3 minutes to breathe very deeply, as if you were filling up a vase from the bottom up all the way to the top of the chest. You hold the breath for 3 seconds, and then slowly, twice as long as your inhale, you let go of the air. And if you did that for about a minute or two, you're actually doing the opposite. You're calming your system down. You're tapping into your parasympathetic system instead of the sympathetic system of being alert, do all the time. So this is something that is part of that inner sensory matrix that can give us balance, that can create self-awareness, self-regulation, self-care, all of those pieces. And the benefits, of course, are that you feel more engaged, you feel more relaxed. The more you get into this pattern, the more resilient you become, the more balanced you are. So the idea that if you keep on giving, and going, and your battery is depleting, you reach a point where you're definitely going to break down. And yet people are looking at you, to you, for help. How can you help somebody if your energy is depleted? You have to be at your best. How do you get to your best? By balancing the energy expenditure with the energy recovery, right? You have to do that. You have to integrate some of those things. And so that leads us to really see that the topic of leadership and well-being are one and only, to be able to inspire others, to attend to others, which brings us to also say, do you tap into yourself and realize that you're now vulnerable and it's okay to be vulnerable? What will you do? And will you take the courage to act onto yourself and say, you know what, I can set aside this time. Everything can wait because my priority is now going inside. And yeah.
Antimo, can I jump in there? I think that is an incredibly important point, I think, for leadership right now, is because we're not in person with each other, it's very hard to model kind of the behavioral pieces, right? So it's even more important, I think, for people that share where they're at, because it's hard to notice that, especially if you're on a screen all day long, or you're just trying to get a to-do list done. But I think leaders that show up with their vulnerability actually have teams that have nervous systems that go down a couple notches, right? Because that's the kind of connection that we're able to do right now. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. So these slides are really creating that thought-provoking idea of what well-being and what leadership means. Especially, when, again, think about vulnerability and think about how leaders are not so prone to stop and go inside and feel where their emotions are at, because we have not been taught that it's okay to listen to our emotions. And yet our thoughts are informed by an emotional state first, not the other way around. So, yeah.
It's so important to have that vulnerability. I think the 1-2 punch of leadership that really makes it, so much more effective in whether you're, the actual leader by title or just through influence, is that authority and empathy. You need to have that empathy. They need to know how much you care before they will care how much you know. And it's just often when we get into hard times, a lot of leaders want to be stoic and they want to not be vulnerable. They want to just show how you can just forge ahead. And that concept of match pace lead and really empathy and authority comes into play, where if you really join people where they're at and really sort of show that empathy and think through that as a leader, they're much more likely to take that next trusted step with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas if you're boldly forging ahead and they're just expected to follow, they may not trust that you actually get where they're at and how hard it could be right now. So that
and you can't just say a nice, well-positioned message, the talking without right now more than ever. That is very critical. Don't say, hey guys, take the time to spend time with your family or go for a walk or spend time in nature, whatever. You actually have to create things for your own people, and you have to demonstrate. You need to go on that trip along with them, or lead the way in that trip, lead the way in that example, and making it okay, make it almost a priority that they do that. Start a Zoom meeting, but what if you started a Zoom meeting and say, hey guys, we're gonna take a 3 minutes slow nasal breathing, because this is important to calm our system, to create focus for our conversation, rather than go and do, go into the meeting and rah, all, into that sympathetic mode. What if you listen to that parasympathetic system a little bit? What does it do? Watch it, sense it. And that also brings me, let's see, am I still sharing? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it also brings me, we talked about how energy is the primary currency for engagement, right? And for performance, if you will. And the idea that we have to create patterns to regenerate that, otherwise we'll burn out. The idea that even when we feel that our cup is filling up, we need to constantly emptying to accommodate for growth. And the idea of there are two states of being in our system. We either have negative energy or positive energy. It's either pleasant or unpleasant, the quality of energy that we have. And I'm going to take you to this other quadrant where you can see that we have a negative quality and an unpleasant quality. And when we are too much in that blue quadrant, we're always positive, we are pleasant, it's fantastic. We want to be there. That's our target. We're fully engaged, we're confident, we're challenged by new ideas, we're connecting with people, we're happy, but we can't sustain that forever. So we have to go down a little bit to stay maybe low positive, a little bit, take the notch of pleasant down a little bit, so that we can strategically disengage from that on all the time. Okay, so that's actually what we have to practice. That arrow that goes from fully engaged to strategically disengaged is what we have to understand is needed. Because the more we spend in the rah time, the more we're depleting ourselves, and that our body is going to let us know.
That was where I feel like I was perpetually trying to scrape back into the blue square, and then my hair started falling out.
Yeah.
I'd like to jump into, my other role besides being at CGL is I'm a somatic therapist. So I do body-based psychotherapy, and it's trauma informed. And I want to just normalize what Paul and Antimo are talking about right now. That's what the body does in response to challenge, in terms of regulating itself, right? In times of high stress and trauma, you're going to have higher highs and lower lows, and a more narrow window of where you actually feel regulated. So that's completely normal, and that's something that we're starting to hear a little bit more about, I think, in terms of what people are facing. And they're like, why am I feeling like I gotta, run, that's fight or flight, or why do I feel like I'm irritable? That's fight, all these are normal responses. And when you get to that high part, your body cannot sustain that, and it'll dip you down, and it shows up as depression and, spacing out and dissociation. Those are all normal safety responses that the body does. So, we have to put this in context, I believe, and what Antimo and Paul are saying, is right on point with that. We're in unprecedented times, and so our bodies are reacting to it with the mechanisms that we were given instinctually. But we also have skills that are the ultimate in portability, which is what Antimo was talking about with the nose breathing. and Paul and his work being close to nature and taking those lessons from nature and applying it to your present moment.
I'm curious to see if there has been any questions on the side of Audrey and Anna. I can see both of them, and would love to have you guys ask anything or comment on anything to take the conversation a little.
Please join us. We'll open it up now if you have thoughts.
And since there is actually two of you, you can just unmute yourself and even ask it.
There's three even. Yeah,
there's three. Actually, we've got Rachel and
Audrey, what are you're working this space quite often. What's coming to mind for you in this discussion?
It's brilliant the way that you guys are lining it up. It's like I almost get a sigh of relief hearing this, because it's been cumulative and I haven't been able to figure out what's going on. And it's like, so I could touch it, but I can't. Yeah. And so this is a beautiful way to share that and use the resources within ourselves. So brilliant, you guys. I love this.
Oh, thanks, Audrey. Yeah, no, you definitely fit that category of someone who cares and gives from herself to her clients and pours in and pours in. And so it's great to see you here. And I know you're familiar with some of these things, but for me as well, it's just a good reminder.
Oh my gosh. It's
Audrey, are you local to Portland or Washington?
I am. I'm in Vancouver.
Oh, Vancouver.
Washington. And I've missed both of those retreats because they were on weekends. So
yeah. We have another one coming up on the 26th.
Okay.
Saturday. Yeah.
Perfect.
And where is Anna located? Yeah.
Hola.
Hola.
I'm in Barcelona. I'm in
Barcelona.
Spain.
Qué bueno.
But I lived many years in Vancouver, Canada.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
I just recently moved to Spain just before the pandemic, hoping for a change of professional life, and all of a sudden.
And you got in for more than what you thought. How is, from your perspective of these few months spent in Spain and the space of leadership and well-being that we've talked about, do you see that being, what's the reaction there? Are they talking about similar things?
Well, part of me, I'm still landing in Spain since I've arrived. I left 12 years ago, and now that I'm back, I'm very curious about how some of the things I've been learning in North America, about how do you engage with others from different levels of yourself, even onion layers, but also how do you relate interculturally? How has it evolved in 12 years, if it has, and is it different than what I have learned in Canada? And my answer is, I don't know. I'm literally struggling with, not only there's this isolation and everybody's trying to continue to their work. I work for a non-profit. I'm doing pro bono work in hoping that we'll get enough funding to get paid. And of course, there's a lot of pressure from, I don't have a job. I don't know people, there's all of these layers. But I'm also experiencing that the mix of people in Spain, I work with in a migrant justice organization. So mostly North African, Sub-Saharan Africa communities that have migrated here, have no papers according to the government. And my organization has a mix of people from different places. And one piece that is really mysterious to me is how differently we are reacting to this situation, and how immensely challenging it is for me to be able to connect and understand, not just because I just landed here and so everybody thinks I'm Spanish, so I should get on and know. Nobody understands this universal thing happening, but also because I haven't lived how people from different cultures here react to situations like what we are living. I would be better at being in Vancouver now and understanding, even if I'm from Spain, than here. So I was hoping to, and you are providing beautiful beads here to wonder about. I'm curious about what skills are needed when you're trying to not only work isolated, but work with communities with whom you have never been in such troubled times as right now. As in, the pattern or the template may not work in these circumstances. Should we humble ourselves and
we
just
have
not
no
know?
template.
Should we? So this
Yeah.
is a little bit
Great.
where I am at.
Yeah. So
Great.
right
Thanks for
now,
asking.
people are trying to come up with templates of how do you deal with what before a year ago was a normal situation in the anormalities of things, and you had a template that you could follow and apply. Now we're out because this inability to be in the same room, the inability to really use that nonverbal communication pattern, which is 70% of the communication message, isn't there, right? And Zoom doesn't really translate for nonverbal as effectively. So I think you are, given the work that you're doing, you're probably in the best place. Sure, you wish you were somewhere where maybe there were more resources, maybe you understood the culture better, that you felt better. But to understand the needs of those people you're serving, you're better served in the place you are now, struggling alone. And if there is any way that we can bring it back to leadership and well-being, think how you can give them a gift without pointing out at the why they're there, that makes them connect with you and value your connection. So if one day they could be on FaceTime, on a Zoom meeting with you, and you would just lead a little bit of a breathing, meditation, expressing gratitude, acknowledging empathy, working on self-awareness, empathy, maybe you are giving them a gift that makes them come along with you more, rather than resist or trying to figure you out. Sometimes we are pre-programmed to want to do something that makes a difference, following one way that has been successful in the past. Well, what if you tried something completely different? What if both of you and the learner were in the uncomfortable space, in that liminal space, but you were giving them a gift that doesn't have the nuances of you do this, you can't do this, why did you do this, but rather take that all off and concentrate on compassion, on internal stuff, and see if that leads them to open up to you and the message and the work more.
I've been
Thank
going
you.
to drop my kids off at daycare for a few years, but not in the last 6 months. But my oldest daycare teacher said something to me about children that it hit me, and I think it's true of adults as well. He said that for our son Canyon, we really need to pay attention to the fact that there's really kind of three things that all the kids actually need. And that's going to be consistency, some predictability, some idea that they know what's going to be happening next. They need some power of choice, and they need a lot of love. And those three things I knew and I could kind of understand and appreciate. Oh, that's nice, but what really made it useful for me is that the idea that they're never all three in perfect balance. It's very rare. But for Canyon, what he really expressed as important for us is that we recognize when one of those is depleted and we overload the other two. So if there's a lot less predictability, there's a lot less certainty in his schedule, or he doesn't know what's happening, or there's a big transition, a lot more power of choice and a lot more love. And they can be easy, small choices like, do you want to brush your teeth first or put on your pajamas first? Those kind of things. And it was really important for me to understand that you could compensate and pour into that sort of thing. So if he's feeling low socially right now, well, let's pour into the predictability and the power of choice. How do we really add those things?
Yeah.
Audrey's out of here. She's waved by. But those concepts I found were really useful for kids, but also for myself and for my leaders.
I want to acknowledge Rachel that cannot speak because her husband is on another call, but she's definitely following and enjoying. Hi, and thank you, Rachel, for being here with us. Yeah. We're definitely approaching the end of the presentation. If there is any other remarks you guys want to make, please do. I'm going to share quickly a slide to see how you can reach us if you need to reach us for any other resources, for continuing the conversation. If you're interested in someday to hire both of us or one of us for any work, I'm trying to slide to...
You can see it.
Slide, here we go. So, but here is how you can get in touch with us. And we hope this has been useful. Paul, if you have any closing remarks about this journey that we introduced and talked about, this parallel between leadership and well-being, and what do we have to take on that journey to be able, and knowing that any tiny little steps toward doing something toward well-being and self-care is already a successful measure, if you will, right? We don't have to stress about thinking and step by step. Can you feel better tomorrow? Can you integrate some breathing? Can you bring people with you on opening a Zoom call and telling them to breathe from their nose deeply for 3 minutes? Any little step, So what can they take on this parallel journey with them that would make them successful?
Yeah, no, I like the idea that that easy and little are the key words in what you just said there. I'll end you with a brief story. So my grandfather lived to be 99 years old, and he was not an athlete his whole life. He actually wasn't really a sports guy. But at age 50, he, after dinner one evening, walked through the garage and saw his son's 10-speed leaning up against the side of the wall there, and decided that he's feeling a little bit stressed. He'd go for a ride around the block just once. And he went around the block, and he really enjoyed it. The wind on his face, the stress relief, the moving his body, it was kind of nice. So the next day he went around twice. And I was a kid when he was in his 80s, and he was riding across the state of Iowa every summer. He rode from Portland down to San Francisco in his 80s. He was an incredible rider in his later years. And I think the real key was that it started very small and it started very easy. It was just taking the bike around the block. And he had no aspirations to be a cross-continent sort of cyclist, but it just happened naturally and consistently because it was so easy and because it was right there. And so I think the real reminder is that there's a lot of things we can do, but if we can make them small steps and very easy and accessible, we have a lot greater chance of creating a new habit and a new set of behaviors rather than just a nice to have that one time I did that thing. So for me, that's the key.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Well, it's been a pleasure. It's been a thoughtful and insightful and thought-provoking conversation. And we hope that all of you can do something as small as breathing from your nose once or twice a day toward greater well-being.
Just breathe around the block.
Yeah.
Thank you all for attending, and for Antimo and Paul for sharing your insights and expertise. And this recording will be available on Cultural Global Labs. We'll also be sharing it with Paul, and so he can share it through his site and his network as well. We're going to get a link to the report that Antimo mentioned, and a copy of the slides. We'll send them to the attendees as well, so that you all have those resources available. And any questions, please reach out to Paul or to Antimo. I know that the two of them are passionate about this issue, as all of us are, and we really need it these days. So thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao. Buenas noches, Ana.
Ciao.
Ciao.